Bathroom Breaks and Bedtime Tales presents A Trip to the Consulate by Sevastian Winters.
The Fiancée. Outside the Consulate, Istanbul, October 2nd, 2018. The wind gnawed at my skin, sharp as a blade. I stood on the narrow sidewalk, one foot rooted in the present, the other slipping into a future I didn't want to see. My phone sat like a stone in my hand, its screen a black mirror, swallowing my reflection.
3 messages, each more desperate than the last. Are you okay? What's taking so long? Please answer me.
Nothing. No reply. No read receipts. The city moved around me, a river I couldn't wade into. People passed, their voices a hum beneath the honking of taxis and the grind of bus brakes. I stood apart, wrapped in a silence that pressed against my skin. My breath came in shallow gasps, the air sharp and metallic, tasting of exhaust and old stone.
Tariq had said it would be quick, just a formality, a piece of paper to finalize his residency. He had been nervous, but he hid it well, his smile a tight line, his hand steady. He needed this. We both did.
Since leaving Saudi Arabia, his life had become a tightrope, every step a gamble. He had been too loud, too bold while in Riyadh, his words like blades cutting through the kingdom's stories. As a journalist, he had always believed that truth could be sharper than any sword. But when his columns started to draw too much light, he had to go.
New York had been a refuge. Writing for an American newspaper had given him a new voice, a louder one. His words reached further, his stories cut deeper. He had thought it would be safe, that distance would blunt the danger. But I saw the way he checked over his shoulder, the way his fingers trembled when he thought no one was looking.
I hugged myself, my arms tight against the shivering. The wool of my coat scratched at my skin, and I pressed my nails into my palms, needing the bite of pain to ground me. The cold had a weight to it, a dampness that curled around my lungs. I could feel it creeping in, an ache that settled in my chest. The consulate loomed ahead, a fortress of glass and stone. Its mirrored windows reflected nothing back to me. Not the street, not the sky, not my own wide eyes. The building felt like a wound, a place where the world folded in on itself.
I thought I saw movement behind the glass, a shadow, a flicker, but when I blinked, there was only emptiness. The sense of wrongness buzzed under my skin, a hum I couldn't shake. My fingers moved on their own, typing another message, the letters a blur on the screen. Tariq, please answer me. The phone remained silent. My pulse thudded in my ears, each beat a slow, wet sound that made my skin crawl. I clenched my teeth, the pressure sending sharp electric lines of pain through my jaw. I focused on it, on the sting of my own body, anything to keep the fear at bay. I approached the guard at the gate. His uniform was too clean, the grey fabric crisp and untouched by the dust of the city. His face was carved from stone, every line sharp and hard. I tried to find his eyes, but they slid over me, cold and empty. My fiancé, he went inside. He hasn't come out. My voice came out small, a thread pulled tight. The guard's expression didn't shift. If he is inside, he will come out. His words were flat, heavy. They settled in the air between us, a wall I couldn't push through. I nodded, the motion jerky, as if my head was no longer part of my body. My mouth tasted sour, a film of bile creeping up my throat. I swallowed,
the sound too loud, echoing inside my skull. My body felt wrong, tight and hollow, my skin stretched too thin over bones that ached.
The city continued around me, blind and deaf to the stillness that wrapped me tight. I could see the world moving, tourists with cameras, a child licking an ice cream, a woman laughing into her phone, but I couldn't hear it. The sounds were muffled, as if I were underwater, my breath bubbling in short, sharp bursts.
I called him again. Each ring seemed to pull at something inside me, unraveling a thread I couldn't hold on to. The silence between rings was a void, dark and endless. I wanted to scream, to fill it with noise, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the cold. A shiver rolled through me, not just from the wind, but from something deeper, a sense of wrongness that tightened like a fist around my gut. I could feel it, a shadow brushing against my skin, a whisper I couldn't quite hear.
The street lights flickered on, their glow soft and hazy, turning the world into a smear of yellow and grey. The shadows deepened, pooling in the cracks of the pavement, creeping up the walls. I tightened my scarf, the fabric rough against my neck, the pressure a comfort.
I thought about running inside, pushing past the guard, demanding answers. I thought about calling the police, the embassy, anyone who might make this nightmare end. But my feet were rooted to the concrete, my legs heavy and useless. My thoughts circled back to Tariq, his face bright and sharp in my memory, the way he had kissed me that morning.
"I'll be right back," he'd promised.
I stayed until the light bled out of the sky, until the cold pressed into every part of me, until the silence filled my mouth and my lungs. I stayed until the city dimmed, until my phone became just a block of glass and metal, heavy and dead.
I stayed until the darkness swallowed me on.
Yasin, the consulate employee. Inside the Saudi consulate, Istanbul, October 2, 2018. I always hated the West Wing. The air over there was too still, too cold. It smelled different, chemical, like bleach and metal. My shoes made too much noise on the tile, each step a sharp tap that echoed off the glass and steel. The building had corners where the light never quite reached, places where the shadows seemed to breathe.
It was supposed to be a regular Tuesday. My cart squeaked as I pushed it through the halls, the sound bouncing back at me. I wiped my hands on a rag, my fingers clammy, the skin tight and dry. The consulate had been too quiet all day, a blanket thrown over a body.
They told me to stay away from the West Wing. Maintenance work, they said. But I'm the maintenance guy. I'd worked here for years, knew every crack in the walls, every creak in the floors. There wasn't any work scheduled. No tools, no noise, just the low hum of air conditioning and the dull throb of my own heartbeat.
There were new faces too, men in dark suits, their ties knotted too tight, their eyes like wet stones. They moved through the halls without making a sound, their footsteps likely swallowed by the soft leather soles of their rich Italian loafers. They didn't talk, didn't nod, didn't see me. I felt like a ghost, a shadow sliding through the edges of their world. The door to the conference room was cracked open. I wasn't supposed to look, but my body moved on its own, my head turning, my eyes searching for something to settle on. I saw the edge of a shoe, polished leather, too clean, the hem of a suit pant, a hand resting on a chair back, a shape slumped forward, the curve of a shoulder, dark hair pressed against the desk. The air thickened, every breath a pull through wet sand. My stomach turned, a slow roll of nausea that tasted of copper and bile. A man addressed me. "You need something?" His voice was flat, every word a pebble dropped into a dark well. I tried to answer, but my throat had closed up. My tongue felt swollen, heavy, filling my mouth. I managed a small side-to-side jerk of my head that sent pain shooting down my neck.
No, I'll come back. My voice sounded wrong, like it belonged to someone else, someone smaller and far away.
I turned away, my feet moving faster, my cart rattling behind me. The wheels caught on the seam of the floor, a stuttering jolt that shot through my legs. My skin felt tight, my pulse a fluttering insect trapped under my ribs.
I hid in a nearby mop closet for what felt like hours, but was likely only 10 to 15 minutes, until I needed to get to the bathroom and to wash my hands, to splash cold water on my face. I felt dirty, my skin crawling, something invisible but sharp pressing against me. The hallway stretched, the lights too bright, buzzing, a high-pitched whine that drilled into my skull.
When I reached for the bathroom door, it opened before I touched it. My hand hung in the air, the space between my fingers and the handle, a chasm I couldn't cross.
Another man stood by the sink. His back was to me, his sleeves rolled up, his hands moving slowly under the stream of water. His white shirt clung to his skin, the fabric wet, stained with something dark and thick. His fingers were pale, slick, the water running in thin pink ribbons.
I couldn't breathe. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. The air was wet, heavy, the smell of metal strong enough to burn. I tasted blood, sharp and warm, and realized I had bitten my lip.
He turned, his movements too slow, too deliberate. His face was blank, smooth as glass. His eyes slid over me, and for a moment I wasn't sure he saw me at all. His expression didn't change, not a flicker, not a crack.
His hands were still wet. He reached for a towel, the white fabric turning pink where he touched it. I watched the stain bloom, a slow spread of color, and I couldn't look away. I backed out of the room, my shoulders scraping against the doorframe. The wood was cold, rough against my skin. I felt every splinter, every jagged edge. My feet moved without me, my legs stiff and unsteady.
The hallway had narrowed, the walls bending in, the ceiling pressing down. I could hear my own breathing, too loud, wet and ragged. My vision blurred at the edges, black spots dancing in the corners of my eyes.
I found the loading dock, the open air hitting me like a slap. The sky was gray, the wind sharp, pulling at my clothes. I fumbled a cigarette out of my pocket, the paper crumpled, the filter soft between my lips. My hand shook, the flame of my lighter a jittery spark.
I pulled smoke into my lungs, hot and acrid. It burned, a sharp pain that cut through the haze in my mind. I exhaled, the smoke curling around me, a thin veil between me and the world. I told myself I hadn't seen anything, that the red on his hands wasn't blood, that the slumped figure in the conference room was just a trick of the light. But the smell lingered, metal and bleach, sharp and thick. I stayed outside too long, the cold sinking into my skin, the cigarette burned down to a nub, the ash smudging my fingers. I couldn't make myself go back inside, couldn't push through those doors and feel the air wrap around me, thick and smothering.
I stayed until my feet were numb, until the shadows stretched long and thin, until the world felt too quiet, too still. And when I finally moved, it was with the weight of 1,000 stones pressing against my back.
I told myself it was nothing, that I hadn't seen what I thought I saw, but the image sat behind my eyes, a dark shape, a stain that wouldn't wash away. Tariq, the victim.
Inside the Saudi Consulate, Istanbul, October 2, 2018.
Istanbul had been kind to me. The city felt like a bridge between worlds, its streets alive with the hum of old and new. I used to think I could lose myself here, blend into the rhythm of the place, but the weight of my old life clung to me. Riyadh was a shadow I couldn't shake, a hand that still tightened around my throat in the dark.
Leaving Saudi Arabia was supposed to be temporary. I had packed a small suitcase, telling myself I would be back by summer. I had only meant to wait out the storm, let the king's rage cool. But my words had cut too deep, and my name had been carved into the list of the unforgiven.
New York had given me a new voice. Writing for the Washington Star allowed me to speak freely, but with every column I published, the noose tightened. The truth had become a blade in my hands, but I knew it could turn on me at any moment. The letters from the Saudi government started polite, then turned to threats, then silence. The silence was worse.
When I walked into the consulate, I was expecting bureaucracy, the slow drag of pens, the dull stamp of approval. I needed the paperwork to finalize my residency in Turkey. It was the last step, a small formality, before I could finally breathe again. The air inside was cold, conditioned to the edge of discomfort. It smelled sterile, like old paper and antiseptic, a hospital without humanity. My shoes squeaked against the marble, the sound bouncing off the high ceilings, swallowed by the shadows. The man behind the desk introduced himself as Omar al-Hadi. His voice was soft, each syllable wrapped in silk, but his eyes were flat, a polished black that showed nothing. I sat across from him, the leather chair hard and unyielding beneath me.
Your paperwork is almost ready, he said. Just a few more questions.
The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls bending inward. I nodded, a reflex more than an answer. I reached for my phone, Leila's last message glowing on the screen. Are you okay? I slipped it back into my pocket. I'd answer her as soon as I was done. I'd tell her everything was fine.
Omar's questions started innocuously. Full name, birth date, reason for requesting residency. His voice moved through the air like a snake, curling into the corners, leaving behind a chill.
Then he asked about my articles, about the things I had written, the things I had said. His voice never rose, never sharpened, but I felt the edge of each word. I shifted in my seat, the leather creaking, the sound too loud.
I think I'd like to speak to someone else, I said. My voice came out thin, frayed at the edges.
Omar didn't blink. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Two men stood by the door. I hadn't noticed them before. They were tall, broad-shouldered, their suits a dark smudge against the white of the walls. Their faces were blank, sculpted from stone. I stood, the motion slow, my muscles tight with resistance. I should go. My fiancée is waiting. Omar remained seated, his hands resting lightly on the desk. His nails were perfectly trimmed, clean, almost delicate. You're not going anywhere. The first blow struck my side, just beneath the ribs. Pain exploded through me, sharp and electric, my vision breaking into shards of light. I stumbled, my knees cracking against the floor. My hands slapped against the marble, the cold biting into my skin. Hands grabbed my arms, calloused fingers digging into my flesh. They hauled me up, my feet scraping against the floor, then threw me to the floor again. My phone fell from my pocket, skittering across the tile. I reached for it, but a boot pressed into my back, pinning me down. My cheek pressed against the cold floor, my breath fogging against the polished surface.
The room spun, shadows smearing across my vision. I tasted blood, hot and metallic, a slow trickle from my split lip.
Omar stood over me now, his silhouette a black smear against the bright overhead lights. His voice came from somewhere far away, distorted, like hearing through water. You've made this difficult for us.
A plastic bag crinkled. I saw it through the fog of my own breath, the thin, clear plastic catching the light. It slipped over my head, the world turning soft and damp. My breath clouded the plastic, each inhale smaller, each exhale hotter. My lungs clawed for air, the bag sucking in against my lips, my nose.
My hands clutched unsuccessfully at the bag, nails scraping, the plastic crumpling under my touch. I felt every wrinkle, every seam, the way the plastic tightened, wrapping my head like a second skin. My pulse pounded in my ears, a dull thud that matched the rhythm of my fading breath. They tightened the belt around my neck. Leather bit into my skin, the buckle a hard press against my throat. My vision tunneled, the room shrinking, a pinprick of light surrounded by darkness. I thought of Layla, her voice, soft in the mornings, her hair tangled, the way she laughed when I called her my safe place. I thought of the words I hadn't said, the stories I hadn't written. I thought of the light, and how I couldn't see it anymore. The hum of a saw cut through the silence. The vibration moved through me, a low buzz in my bones. My body twitched, a marionette with its strings cut. Pain flared, then dulled, a wave pulling me under. The cold spread, a numbness that reached into my chest, wrapped around my heart. The world turned grey, then black, then nothing. And as I slipped away, the last thing I felt was the cold marble against my skin, the world pressing down and the soft pull of darkness as it swallowed me whole.
Gamal, the assassin.
Inside the Saudi Consulate, Istanbul, October 2, 2018.
The air in the consulate was too clean, the kind of clean that burns your nose, that makes every breath taste like chemicals and metal. I moved through the hallway, my footsteps soft, the rubber soles of my shoes gripping the polished tile. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, a low drone that pressed against my eardrums.
We had arrived early, moving through the back entrance, our badges clipped tight, our expressions set. The team was 10 strong, each man a cog in a well-oiled machine. I didn't know all their names, didn't need to. We were here for one purpose, and there was no room for small talk.
I carried the black duffel bag, the tools inside wrapped in white cloth, each piece nestled like a newborn. The weight of it pulled against my shoulder, a steady reminder. My hands were steady, my breath even. The job needed that. Calm, precision. Emotions were a liability, something to be folded up and tucked away. I watched from the corner of the hallway when they brought him in, my body a shadow against the wall. Tariq Hassan. I know his face, had seen it on the pages of newspapers, his name attached to words that had cut through the kingdom like a knife. His articles had teeth, biting into things best left alone. He had written about freedom, about truth, as if those things were real, as if they could exist in a place where words could kill.
He looked smaller in person, his shoulders hunched, his feet dragging, the soft scuff of his shoes a thin sound against the silence. His breath came in sharp bursts, each exhale a puff of damp air that hung in the cold. I watched the way his hands moved, fingers twitching, as if he could pull reality back into place if he just found the right thread.
Omar led him into the conference room, his voice a low hum, each word polished smooth.
Omar had a talent for calm. He could wrap a threat in silk, make it sound like a favor. I'd seen him talk men into their own graves, his smile the last thing they saw before the lights went out.
The door clicked shut. I counted the seconds, each one a bead on a string, pulled tight. My fingers flexed against the strap of the bag, the muscles in my arm tight and sure. I moved, my steps a whisper against the floor.
The room smelled of fear. It hung in the air, a dampness that sat heavy on my tongue. Tariq sat at the desk, his hands resting on the polished leather, fingers curled tight. His phone lay on the floor, the screen cracked, a thin line of light bleeding through the glass.
He was talking, his voice frayed, each word a thin thread. I need to go. My fiancée is waiting. His eyes were too bright, the white showing, the dark centers moving, searching for a way out.
Omar didn't answer. He reached into his jacket, his movements smooth, deliberate. The plastic bag rustled in his hands, the sound too loud, crinkling through the air. Tariq's breath hitched, a sharp intake that pulled the room tighter around us.
Rahim took the left, I took the right. Our movements were practiced, the belt already in Rahim's hands, the plastic slipping over Tariq's hand with a soft hiss. His body reacted, the muscles jerking, his arms swinging out. The chair legs scraped against the floor, a high-pitched squeal that drilled into my skull.
The bag tightened, each breath sucking it in against his face. His lips moved, the plastic fogging with each exhale, the moisture beading like sweat. His hands clawed at the back, nails scraping, the sound a muffled rasp.
He looked at me, his eyes looking on mine. I felt it, the weight of his stare, the raw, open fear. It was a mistake. I shouldn't have looked. There was a rule, never meet their eyes. It made them real. It made them human. I pushed down, my knuckles white, the tendons in my wrists standing out under the skin. I focused on the pressure, the way the plastic crinkled, the tightness of the belt as Rahim pulled it taut. I could feel the heat of Tariq's skin through the back, the thud of his pulse a weak flutter against my palm.
The door creaked, light spilled into the room, thin and sharp. A man stood there, a maintenance worker, his hands still on the handle. His mouth opened, a small O, his body half turned, caught between running and speaking. "You need something?" I said. My voice was flat, every word a stone dropped into a well. The air tightened, the room pulling in around us.
His lips moved, a stuttered sound, a mumble that slipped through the air. No, I'll come back.
His eyes darted from Tariq to me, his pupils wide, the whites a stark ring. I could smell his fear, a sharp animal scent that prickled at the back of my throat. He backed out, his movements jerky, his silhouette shrinking as the door closed. I know he'll never say anything though. He's been trained well.
I waited, listening to his footsteps fade. When the silence settled again, I pulled the bag tight, my fingers pressing into the soft curve of Tariq's neck. His body had gone slack, his movement slowing, the fight draining out of him.
The hum of the saw filled the room. The vibration moved through me, a low buzz that grounded me. I focused on the work, the way the blade bit into the skin, the wet crunch of bone. I wrapped the pieces in plastic, each fold neat, each corner tucked in. The room smelled of copper and bleach, a sweetness that clung to my clothes.
When it was done, I washed my hands. The water ran pink, the soap lathering into a dull gray foam. The sink was white porcelain, the cracks filled with grime, the faucet speckled with rust. I watched the stains swell down the drain, the water spinning, a tight spiral into darkness.
Outside, the sky had turned grey. The wind bit at my skin, the cold a slap that pulled me back to the surface. I loaded the bags into the van, each one a quiet thud, the weight settling into the metal. As we drove away, I stared out the window, the city blaring into smudges of light and shadow. My hands felt clean, but I could still feel the ghost of his skin, the warmth of his breath against the plastic. His eyes, the way they had held mine, lingered, a dark spot in my vision.
And as the street swallowed us, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still there, his name a whisper under my breath, a stain I couldn't scrub away.
The Mastermind.
Riyadh, October 2nd, 2018.
The room was dark, save for the soft glow of the tablet on my desk. The curtains were drawn tight, shutting out the harsh Riyadh sun, leaving only the cool, sterile light of the screen. I sat back in the leather chair, the edges of the room fading into shadows. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound, a low drone that matched my heartbeat, steady and deliberate.
On the screen, Tariq Hassan's latest article lay open, the black text sharp against the white. His words cut deep, each line a needle beneath my skin. He had always known where to press, where to find the bruises beneath the surface. His pen had drawn blood from the kingdom itself, and the stain was spreading.
I read the paragraph again, the one about the dissenters, the whispers in the streets. He wrote of freedom, of voices rising, as if the kingdom's walls were nothing but paper. He was wrong. They were stone, they were iron, and I was the one who held the keys. The phone on the desk vibrated, a soft hum that sent ripples through the glass of water beside it. I picked it up, the plastic smooth and cool against my skin. It was an old model, the kind without a camera, without a history, the kind that could disappear without leaving a trace.
I pressed it to my ear, and Omar's voice slid into the silence. It's done.
My pulse didn't change, my breath remained even. I had expected nothing less. No trace? None. The consulate is clean. The body is gone. His voice was steady, practiced. He had learned well.
I set the tablet down, the screen dimming, Tariq's words slipping away. The team?
Already en route back. The package is being handled. I closed my eyes, the darkness behind my eyelids a cool blanket. Good. Make sure the staff stays quiet. Any leaks, and they join him.
Omar's answer was immediate, a blade snapping into a sheath. Understood.
I ended the call and placed the phone on the desk. The room seemed to breathe around me, the walls pressing in, the shadows stretching. I could still see Tariq's face in my mind, the last photograph taken of him, his eyes too bright, his smile too sharp. He had been warned, he had been given a chance to step back, to let the ink dry and the truth fade. But he had pushed, and now he was gone. I rose from the chair, my knees stiff, the leather sighing beneath me. The thick carpet swallowed my footsteps as I moved to the window. I pulled the curtain back a fraction, just enough to let a sliver of light cut through the dark. The city lay beneath me, sprawling and restless, a beast coiled under the sun.
Men like Tariq believed in things they couldn't hold, couldn't see, ideas, principles. He had thought his voice was enough, that his words would outlast him. But the world belonged to those who understood weight and force, who could push when others hesitated. His story would fade, his name swallowed by the noise.
I turned away from the window, the light a blade between my shoulder blades. I had meetings to attend, hands to shake, orders to give.
The kingdom required stability, and stability required sacrifice. There would be questions, of course. There always were. But questions could be answered, and those who asked them could be made quiet.
I slipped the phone into my pocket, the weight of it small but solid. It would find its way to the bottom of the sea before the day was out, its plastic shell crumbling under salt and pressure. I wouldn't need it again.
As I stepped into the hallway, the door closed softly behind me. The room was left in darkness, the shadows settling back into place, the air still and cold. And in that silence, I allowed myself a single thought. Not of Tariq, not of the man he had been, but of the empty chair where he would have sat, the silence where his voice should have been. A problem solved, a ripple smoothed.
And then, nothing.
Days later, in a prominent New York newspaper, Washington journalist vanishes inside Saudi consulate. Foul play suspected.
Istanbul, October 20, 2018.
A prominent Saudi journalist, Tariq Hassan, disappeared after entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October 2, despite official claims from Saudi authorities that Hassan left the building shortly after his arrival. Turkish officials have provided evidence suggesting otherwise.
Security footage captured Hassan entering the consulate at 1:14 p.m., but no footage shows him leaving. His fiancée, Leila Mumad, waited outside the consulate for hours, sending unanswered messages to Hassan's phone. He told me he'd be right back, Murad said. I never saw him again. A Turkish consulate worker who requested anonymity reported seeing unusual activity that day, including restricted access to certain areas of the building and new faces among the staff. There were men in suits, and the air felt wrong, the source said. I didn't want to ask questions. Turkish investigators believe Hassan was killed inside the consulate and that his body was disposed of by a team of Saudi operatives. While Saudi officials have denied any involvement, leaked intelligence suggests that Hassan was targeted due to his critical journalism and his work with an American newspaper, the Washington Star. Hassan had been living in exile, his writings critical of the Saudi regime gaining international attention. His latest articles focused on human rights abuses and political repression in the kingdom, sources close to him said. The international community has reacted with growing concern. Human rights organizations and foreign governments have called for a transparent investigation. The United Nations issued a statement urging Saudi Arabia to cooperate fully with Turkish authorities.
The disappearance of Tariq Hassan is not just a personal tragedy, but a threat to press freedom everywhere, said Marie Lemoyne, director of the International Federation for Human Rights.
As the investigation continues, Hassan's fate remains a flashpoint in diplomatic relations and a stark reminder of the dangers faced by journalists who speak truth to power.
Author's note: the events depicted in A Trip to the Consulate are a work of fiction. The names of the characters and certain details of the story have been altered for creative purposes. However, the story is inspired by real-life events surrounding the disappearance of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. On October 2, 2018, Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist and columnist for The Washington Post, entered the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, to obtain documents for his upcoming marriage. He was never seen leaving the building. His fiancée, Hatice Cengiz, waited outside the consulate, sending unanswered messages to his phone, much like the fictional Layla in this story.
Subsequent investigations by Turkish authorities revealed evidence suggesting that Khashoggi was murdered inside the consulate by a team of Saudi operatives. Intelligence reports and leaked recordings indicated that his death was premeditated and that his body was likely dismembered and disposed of to conceal the crime. Despite international outrage and calls for transparency, many details of what happened that day remain shrouded in mystery, hidden by layers of diplomatic immunity, conflicting narratives, and alleged cover-ups.
While several individuals were put on trial in Saudi Arabia, the process was widely criticized for its lack of transparency. 5 men were sentenced to death in 2019, but their sentences were later commuted to 20 years in prison. Many human rights organizations and international observers believe that those who ordered and orchestrated Khashoggi's murder were never truly held accountable. High-level officials suspected of involvement have faced no formal charges, and the full truth may never come to light.
This story attempts to capture the chilling reality of what might have happened, exploring the layers of fear, power, and silence that often surround such tragedies. The voices of those involved, from the waiting fiancé to the unseen hands that carried out the deed, are imagined, but they serve as a reminder of the human cost behind the headlines.
The death of Jamal Khashoggi remains a stark reminder of the dangers faced by journalists worldwide and a chilling example of how truth can be buried under stone and steel.